about the right time this time, you guys.
Welcome to the stage,
Thank
Ashley.
you for having me. My goodness, it's been a long day for all of you if you've been here since the beginning, so thank you so much for staying the whole time.
Of course, yeah, we're waiting for you, of course. So, Ashley, before I go on, so this is a little envelope of like some money here. This is how I first got to know Ashley when I was at Comic-Con. Don't cry. I was making sure that the panel had enough water, and of course I had to go and find bottles of water at Comic-Con, and I finally found it, and they're like, $6 a bottle. And I'm like, but there's 6 people I gotta buy this for. They're like, $6 a bottle. So I bought $36 worth of water right there on the spot, brought it out. I was like, hope you guys enjoy this water. Enjoy it nice slowly because it's $6 a bottle. She was the only speaker that made sure she snuck this money into my backpack. Thank you, Ryan, for doing that. That she made sure.
Thank you. I finally got the last laugh because of you. Yeah, he gave it back to me and threw it in my bag, but little did he know that I know tricks. And I took it out of my bag and then I gave it to Ryan, and he made sure that Francis
exactly.
got it eventually.
And I always kept this because it reminded me just how considerate and just how kind Ashley is as a person, and made sure, she didn't need to do it, but she did it to make sure that at least to pay back for her share and everyone else's share of water there. So that was one of the nicest, most compassionate things I've ever seen, and when I just met like 5 minutes ago, dude. So I'm keeping this as a little reminder and as one of my good luck charms right now.
No, I'm so glad. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
So I have so many questions for you, but number one, did you always know that you wanted to be an actor?
You know, it's funny that you actually asked that. I remember in 5th grade, you know how, in elementary school, they really want you to think about what you want to be when you grow up. And we had an auditorium style kind of presentation on our last day of 5th grade. And I remember getting up there behind this little slide that I made, and I quoted Whitney Houston, first of all. And then second of all, I said, yeah, I don't want to be a doctor like my dad. I want to be an actress. And people looked at my mom, and they kind of chuckled at me. And back then, I guess it was kind of a far-fetched dream. I was from a small little town in Orange County, one of only a couple of Asian kids in that town. And yeah, I think I might have proved those parents wrong that kind of laughed, and my mom kind of knew, I guess, that this is what I was going to do.
Your mom, I think, even told me when I had a chance to chat with her that your personality was so effervescent and so obvious as a child.
Effervescent is a good word, yes. Let's not sugarcoat it. The way that she puts it is some parents put their kids in soccer because they have too much energy, and mine put me into theater because I was too dramatic. And she hoped it would be a good place to channel it, but I was actually really nervous the first time that I decided to do community theater because I wasn't sure how big I could be or how much I could show, and it's kind of something that I guess I've worked on throughout the years of like how to be able to express that.
How did you make that transition from community theater? And that was that clip with you on Fresh Off the Boat. That was the first time I saw her, and I was like, oh my God, she's so talented. She has such great presence. I think you're outshining the regular cast on that one clip. But how did you make that transition from community theater to prime time?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it was so long ago that I don't really remember, but I know that a lot of sacrifice on behalf of my parents and my grandparents and my friends went into it. I remember doing online high school and finishing out through that at 15. I remember doing like online middle school like a weirdo. I was that girl who was doing online school. But yeah, I honestly, I couldn't tell you. One day I went in for an audition with a commercial agent, and then I started doing commercials, and then from there I started doing television.
And then movies.
Movies, yeah, and here we are 13 years later.
Amazing, beautiful. Now, we also talked a little bit about how now as a I would say as an icon, right? as an
You're
icon.
being generous, please.
As an icon. But this also comes with a lot of responsibility because now you're also a role model for a lot of young Asian women, just even young Asians around. But this also takes on a toll of what you're responsible for, also not just from what you feel like you should represent, but also what you should do as a human being. Like I said, this already shows me you already know what an actual human being is. But you also have gone through some stuff that you had to witness in like college campus protests and things like that. I would love to hear some of.
Yeah, you know, when I think about my life, I think a lot of it has been me being my own worst enemy. And that's something I have no problem talking about, is the fact that, you know, I knew that I had depression and anxiety from a very young age. I thankfully am medicated for it now, which is great. My boyfriend was like, you should get on Wellbutrin, and here I am on Wellbutrin, and it's slaying. But yeah, thank you. My Wellbutrin gang, let's go. But yeah, recently, one of the more difficult patches of my life happened last year at UCLA before I walked the stage over the summer. I had graduated in December of 2023, and by late April, early May of 2024, UCLA had its encampments for Palestine. And I remember thinking, I don't know necessarily what this is about, but I wanted to see what was going on because I knew that it was going to be historic one way or another. The last time that I remember people protesting on college campuses was for Vietnam, because why were we in Vietnam? But yeah, it was immensely difficult. I had a lot of friends that got arrested those days, and people shot fireworks into us. And I was in intensive therapy for a couple of weeks after that because the nightmares were so bad that the only way that I thought that I could escape it was by not being alive. And so, yeah, I realized that a lot of my life perspective has come from the fact that even though, you know, I grew up in an immensely privileged situation, that for some reason my brain chemicals don't like me, and I've had to learn how to channel that into things like acting, and it's given me such an outlet to be able to put all of that sadness and all of those feelings into something and someone that isn't really me.
What are some of the ways, or some of the characters if you have played? Like, what are some of your favorite characters you played, and how did you channel parts of yourself into those characters and wanted people to maybe even get a message from that?
Yeah, you know, as of recently, actually, some of the best characters that I feel like I've played have been just for auditions, things that you will actually never see that sit in a Dropbox folder. Yes, but I mean, a lot of the work that I've been doing recently has been just auditioning. But in terms of characters that I've actually done, I think about Clemensia, who like most recently is like so different from me, but also I see bits of myself in her that I don't like. But yeah, I think I wanted to listen to kind of how they spoke in the Capitol in the Hunger Games, and so I watched the originals over and really tried to emulate that.
I love that. I could see a lot of the echoing and paying homage to the original Hunger Games. I love that so much. You're also a songwriter, is that correct?
How do you know that? Yes, sometimes. Unofficially, I don't sing in front of people. It's like actually one of my worst fears is like the sound of my own voice taped and then having to hear it over again. I'm sure you can relate. But yeah, when I am alone in my room at 3 in the morning, I write a song sometimes.
Do you own accompaniment to it?
I play the guitar most times, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is this something that just for yourself, or do you ever think someday you might share some of these songs professionally? I
don't know. I think, you know, a lot of my songwriting has come from personal experience and heartbreak, as well as just the confusion of what it is to be in your 20s and still be figuring it out. I think a lot of, you know, my 3 a.m. woes, which is what I'm usually writing, are about those things.
Is acting something that you plan on doing full-time or part-time and something else?
Yeah, for a while, I wanted to come here, actually. I wanted to be at Stanford Law for a while, but then I decided I had quite a bit of disillusionment with the law, current Supreme Court-wise, and I didn't really know if it was something that I wanted to uphold if I didn't morally agree with it. And so I have since put that off. But yeah, I hope to act for the rest of my life, for as long as I guess you guys will have me, and as long as my agents will not drop me.
I love your agents. They're the best. What do you want to convey in your journey of acting as an entertainer, as an actor? What are some, especially during this whole, as Rich said, we're at that moment of representation now, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, one reason why so many people, especially young Asian girls, look at you, see themselves, and be like, oh my God, it is possible, right? So what is your personal mission you want to do with your career now, that you want to do from long term?
Oh wow, what a question. That's a big one. I think in terms of my day-to-day personal life, the thing that I try to do is like keep my heart and my ears open for who needs help. My mom is a really big giver, and she's the one that really instilled that in me, where she was always looking for ways to be able to help the people around her. And she very much instilled that in me, but I guess work-wise, maybe it'll transfer over. I think I've heard somewhere that you should dream so big that your dreams scare you, and so like in my ideal world, I'm not just an actress, but hopefully someone that advocates for peace and that is able to talk about, you know, the political issues that plague our world, like hunger and you know, literacy and women, trying to get, you know, education and things like that. Those are things that really, really matter to me.
I asked this to the AWA group, and I would love to ask you this if you're okay with it. Your one wish. If you had one wish, magic wand in your hand, and you could wave it, and anything you wish for yourself and for the world would come true, what do you think that would be? Anything at all?
Wow. I think I would hope that people are able to put themselves in other people's shoes and to be more empathetic. I think that's my job as an actor. And I think that's where a lot of my advocacy comes from, is the fact that, you know, Angelina Jolie once said that if she had been born in a different country, her life would have looked very different. A woman with the same amount of talent that I have in a different country would have a different outcome. She could be more talented than me. She could work harder and want it more than me. And because of where she just is, it won't be possible. So yeah, I think I would hope for more empathy if people are able to genuinely put themselves in other people's shoes. And along with that, you know, the freedom to be able to not deal with colonization or capitalism or just the pressures of having to be enough and having to, you know, pull your weight based on how much money you can make. And I don't believe that that's where we should find our value. I think our value comes from other people and being there for other people and the humanity that we bring.
Do you write stories too?
I've written scripts. Most of my scripts are basically about real life. I think it's a good exercise if you want to get into writing, is to like sit in a cafe for an hour and just people watch and just listen to what people have to say. And then try to put that into like a script format and see what that looks like and read it back. And in your mind, if that plays out correctly, then congratulations, maybe you can be a writer-director.
If you were to write a story that you would want to star in, what kind of story would that be?
You know, I knew I wanted to be an actress from a young age, but I also really wanted to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, which is a polar opposite. I get that, but at a very young age, my left lung collapsed spontaneously, and I was in the hospital, the ICU, for 9 days, and they ended up doing a CT scan, and they found a tumor in my lung, and they ended up removing it, and it wasn't not cancer, we'll put it that way. No one could figure out what it was. I mean, Stanford here couldn't figure out what it was when they sent the biopsy.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that's where a lot of my like heart for children that are in the hospital, you know, my work with Ronald McDonald House has been a part of that, because I remember what it was like being in that room and being really bored. But I also remember my mom telling me that Ronald McDonald House gave her a place to be able to cry away from me. And so that really like affected me, and yeah, I think that's why I love their work a lot.
with your mom being a nurse, right?
She's a nurse practitioner
Nurse
in
practitioner?
psychiatry. Yeah.
And your father's also a doctor, right?
He's an allergist.
An allergist, okay. Did you ever pursue the path of pre-med?
No. Oh, and thank goodness. I got to college and I was like, I'm here to be a communication major and to figure out, how to do the best talk, I guess, that I can do. It was majorly helpful when it came to, I guess, being an actor as well, because I think the biggest thing that we do as actors is try to communicate what is on that page or what we feel in here, on here, and with our bodies and with our voice. And I think my formal training and studies have really helped me with that.
That's beautiful. Where did the whole vision of being a lawyer come from?
I was told growing up by other lawyers that I would make a good lawyer. And if you are a strong-willed person, you've probably heard that too. But yeah, I like the idea of being able to know your rights. I think that knowing your rights and knowing the things that protect you are very important. I mean, my thing when I go to the airport is I just use my Fourth Amendment right and go, hi, I'd like to opt out of facial recognition because they say they don't keep the photo, but girl, you keep that data, and I don't want that. So, so that's, I think, where my love for the law really came in. I had a professor that went here actually to Stanford Law who taught constitutional law, and it was one of the best classes. It was some of the best classes I ever took at UCLA, and he encouraged me and still encourages me to go to law school, but I don't know.
So you may be a lawyer, but you're definitely probably going to play one on TV.
I'd hope to. I mean, I think that's where I was getting at with the cardiothoracic surgeon thing too, is like, if I can't actually become that, why can't I just play one on television? Yeah. And, excuse me, maybe I'll get to shadow a few lawyers or a few doctors in the process.
Beautiful. Now, you've recently moved to the East Coast, right?
I did, yes. I'm an East Coaster now.
You're East Coaster. All right. What is the difference? I love hearing it from you. What do you love and hate about both West Coast and East Coast living?
I hate driving. So moving to New York for me was the prime place because I love the subway. New York, I think, is where I hope to put my roots down at some point. I mean, my boyfriend is from New York. He went to Columbia, and he's been there for, 6 years at this point. And so, I'd love to have little kids, but probably here, right? So I do see myself coming back to California at some point. But I think there are a lot of skills that living in New York gives you, like self-reliance is huge, because when your phone dies and you have to get on the subway and get home, you got to figure that out, and people don't use maps anymore. So you have to have it all up here, and I think it's made me smarter, maybe.
I don't know. Obviously, yeah, when my phone dies, I'm like, oh my God, where am I? Okay, so what are your visions for yourself in the future as an entertainer? Do you want to still stay in front of the camera for as long as possible, or do you want to transition to the back of the camera and start doing creative stuff?
So you've recently talked to my mom. My mom has recently started executive producing, which has been such a big venture for her. And so she tells me, she's like, you actors have it so easy. You guys just have to show up. That's it. You show up and then you go home. And I was like, yeah. Sometimes those, in between, it's like 17 hours goes by, and, I might have to take a final or two at 2 in the morning in Taiwan. But yeah, I'm sure it's easy. But yeah, so I don't know that I want to go into executive producing or into writing and directing, because I just know it's a lot to take on. And but maybe. Who knows?
I can see you being very successful in that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. What are some roles that you hope to play someday, and why?
I recently went out for an audition that was a little bit risque. And I don't know that I see myself as that person, but then I thought to myself, I was like, when's the last time we had an Asian American that was kind of cool and kind of edgy, maybe. So I don't know if that's something that I would necessarily want to play right now, but it's something that I think I want to do in the future, and I hope to be able to do that. I also hope to do horror. I think that after doing The Hunger Games with that big scream, That fall and that scream that you saw, we did that like 35 times that day. And I did my own stunts, except for when my stunt double actually fell onto the floor to get that shot. But I was still falling and throwing myself back like 5 feet onto this thick pad. I woke up the next morning and I was so sore. But I don't know. What was the question? I'm sorry, I have ADHD. I didn't take my medication today.
Good. No, you answered. And my next question would be then, because you played so many different characters, right? Ever, Audrey, Clemens.
Clemensia, I was on Fuller House for a long time.
Yeah, the Full House is right. What do you do to get into the mindset of each character? Because they're so different.
Are they? They feel like different versions of me, I guess. So I guess maybe they don't feel that different when I do them. I do know that, if they bring me back, it's important for me to go through, I guess, the material I already have that I've already recorded in that character, because all I have to do, I think, is look at it and be like, oh, I know how to do that. But I can't explain it to you in words. It just kind of happens.
Right there on set? Or do you, get yourself in a mindset right before your set?
It happens, I think, when I get into hair and makeup. I think that kind of puts me into it. But it has to change is the thing, too. So, I can't be married to one version of a character because I think, like Rich was saying, you have to be adaptable. And I remember my audition for Ever was completely different than how she actually turned out being, which was, a lot more timid and sheltered and not sure of herself. And I think I played her a bit more confident. Because our director, Arvin Chen, was like, can you make her more, nervous? I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought you did a great job of conveying her as a character that went through a growth arc.
Yeah.
And I love that. You definitely saw the same character, but at a higher level toward the end of the movie. So that was beautiful the way you did that. What are some of the pieces of advice that you can give? Because I know there are people out there who are just trying to figure out how to get into this industry.
The advice that I would have given you when I first started is very different than the advice that I would give today. The industry is a whole different beast today than it was, even before COVID. I would say, though, making sure that you get good representation. You should never have to pay for an agent. That's not... They're just trying to scam you. Get a good headshot. I think that's really important. Make sure that you look like you. And, recently I started memorizing Shakespeare for fun. So if you feel like at 3 in the morning and you can't sleep, you're like, oh, why don't I memorize Hamlet's soliloquy? That should be fun. Maybe acting is for you. I think watch a lot of movies and figure out what you like about certain actors' performances and what you don't like about other actors' performances. And don't be afraid to, I guess, sit in front of your mirror and be crying, because I do that a lot. you have to know how your face looks, and I think you have to be really comfortable with how your face looks, because acting isn't always pretty, and I think that's something that I've had to unlearn, is that the more that I've tried to act, the less good that it's been, and the more that I've just kind of relaxed and been myself, the better it's been.
Yeah, I can, even though you play all these characters, I can still see a bit of you in them, which I think is awesome. I guess one more question I do want to ask you is, going forward, what are some of the life advices that you've learned that you feel like it's really important to share with people from all these different age groups here? If there's one piece of advice that you think is core to your existence and your ability to constantly move forward.
Yeah, I think I figured that out when I was reading The Myth of Sisyphus by Camus. Or was it The Rebel? It was one of those. But basically, he says, you either choose suicide or you choose hope. And it's hard, because where do you find that hope? And there have been these moments where I sit there and I'm like, what do I even do with my life? Is it even worth anything? And in those moments, I realize that the way that you find that hope is by taking your humanity and connecting it to other people. I think that guilt is a killer. I think that being alone and loneliness is an epidemic, especially in this country right now, it's difficult, and we need each other. Whatever that looks like for you. I recently, hung out with my next door neighbor in New York, who I just met, and we got dinner together because, sometimes it feels like the end of the world is happening, and you have to be able to rely on your community to be able to get through that. And I'm really grateful for the people who have educated me about that. I'm really grateful for the Black and Indigenous community that continues to instill and educate me on all of these topics that I wouldn't have known about because I was raised in such a privileged and largely Caucasian area. But yeah, I think more than ever, community has been really important, and not just like, oh yeah, like we're gonna hang out, but like talking about your feelings and talking about what makes life difficult and how you're gonna get through it together.
Okay, I love that. I love the fact that you put Kid Center with community at the very core of that. This one I'm very curious about. Has there been a character or a book or a piece of work that has been extremely inspirational to you on how to constantly improve your craft?
Yeah, The Art of Loving by Eric Fromm is a book that I've probably read 9 times at this point. Wow. It is highlighted and tearing apart at the seams, but he talks about love not just as something that happens to us, but as something that we're actively engaging in, and that love is something that we need to work on. It is an art. And the same way that acting is an art, I realized that I have to be able to tie my love for humanity to my work, which in turn ties into, this idea of love and what it means to be able to express yourself through that.
I love the fact you mentioned love for humanity as part of your own existence.
Yeah,
right?
and it wasn't always that way, I think, though. I was raised evangelical Christian, and so this idea of your neighbor and loving your neighbor and loving yourself was always really drilled into me, but I don't think I fully understood what that meant until, actually I was in Evanston, and I was speaking at Northwestern. They'd asked me to come speak, and I spent that morning going to a Target trying to get a lint roller. And there was a woman sitting outside, and she was obviously unhoused, and she asked me how my day was going. It was that simple of an interaction, and we ended up talking for 20 minutes. And she was like, do you mind getting me some pads? My flow's been really heavy, and I've been bleeding through everything. And this is a bit TMI perhaps, but I had been going through something similar because I had gotten on a new medication, and I was like, oh my God, like that, I literally was dealing with this morning, except I got to take a shower.
Yeah.
And so I went to the Target and got her all this stuff, and she was like, I don't know how to thank you. And she took this necklace off that she was wearing. I actually have it with me. And she took off this necklace and she said, this was my mother's, and I'd like to give it to you. And I was like, you really can't. Like, I don't deserve this. And she's like, I have nothing left to give you. And I told her, I was like, you have given me your humanity, and that is more than enough. And so I think when we stop looking at people for the things that we are on the outside, but the fact that every single person has a story just as deep, just as complex as yours, and I think that's also where my advocacy for Palestine came in too. Was it wasn't a political thing for me. It was I've seen children be bombed in multiple ways, and I'm tired of it. It was a heartbreaking thing, and I think that's where a lot of my life perspective comes from, is the fact that I think everyone deserves the chance to be able to be the greatest thing that they can be, and just because you were born somewhere else, it doesn't mean that it should be any less, or that your grief is any less.
Any last words of humanity, compassion you want to share with the group?
No, but I mean, thank you for coming. And I see all of you genuinely, and it means a lot that you came out to listen to me talk. I don't know who I am to be the kind of person to be saying things. I'm only 23, and I think I'm still figuring life out a lot. But it really means a lot that you value what I have to say to be here. And it's really nice to see all your faces.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ashley Liao.